we all know that it's business and it's not all sunshine and roses, right? So on the flip side, what are some things some athletes who are building their brand and they're dealing with more, businesses? What are some things that you tell them to look out for when it comes to like contracts? There's some high level things. I know you don't want to give out the keys
Yeah.
that they have to pay for the consulting for, but like, what are some things that athletes watching this now can walk away with saying that, hey, these are some things you need to look out for as you go into the business side of things?
I actually don't mind sharing because I can't manage everybody.
Yeah,
Um, I think one of the things they have to look at is to work on building out their brands. Now, to me, nobody should just be thinking about the sport that they do. That's half of the job.
that's true.
I think the storytelling, how much you post on social, doing those interviews, all those are an important part of building out a brand. To me, sports is a vehicle to take us to the next thing. It's a platform from which we're building out who we are. When you think about the life cycle of an athlete, it's pretty short.
Yeah,
It's a small aspect of your life. You know this.
true.
You've done it.
Yes.
And so you have to think about everything that happens after. And the life after track and field, football, motorsports, everything is much longer than the life that you had during a sport. So how am I making an impact now that I can continue to bank on? So just use an example of my client that I mentioned earlier, Shaka Hislop. He would have played in the Premier League for 14 years at top flight football in England. He went to the World Cup with Trinidad in 2006. But during that time, you're brand building. So when he's done, he goes off to ESPN. He's an analyst, has been there since I think 2008, thereabout. But you want to think about all of that. So get the media training because even last year, when was the World Cup? Was it last year?
World Cup was 2022.
Okay,
I
yeah.
think it was, yes.
2022.
So even during the World Cup, two of my footballers, Damian Lowe and Andre Blake, were analysts on TV. Because, of course, we're not at the World Cup. How can we get value for the brands as well as maybe it's something that you can look at growing in for when you retire? To be a commentator or an analyst or a part of the broadcasting world is an option for a lot of athletes. So they kind of get a chance to wet their foot and see if that's something that they'd love to do. So it's things like that.
I mean, I really, really love that answer. Obviously, Leap Marketing know what they're talking about because we're talking about longevity, right? And me now, June, when I was an athlete, I wasn't thinking about this, right? Tanya, you just mentioned that your lifespan in the sport, your client had 14 years. 14 years is really nothing in the whole thing of your lifespan. If you retire when you're 35, which is a long sporting career, you're probably going to live up until you're 80. So you're going to live long after. Are you going to make enough money in your sport that's going to sustain your lifestyle? More than likely, no. So you need to have that brand that you build up over that 14 years that could get you a job, get you opportunities as an analyst on other sports things. So athletes do not think about that. We're in the moment, especially when it comes to, what are you spending your money on now? You get 100K. Are you going to buy a car? Are you going to invest that in some stocks? Are you going to buy a house? Something that's going to live on. So that's something that I want to talk about a lot in terms of the finances. And I think you make a great point in letting athletes be aware of like, hey, you're not just here to just, say, get Jaden a contract for right now, right? You're here to build Jaden's brand long past when he retires, whether it's 35 or 40. So you're thinking long term, which is what, unfortunately, I can tell the truth. A lot of people within track and field specifically don't think about that. They want to maximize on an athlete's money right now and how much they can make off them. But when they're finished, all that money is finished during their competitive years, and it goes long beyond that. And once they finish competing, those agents are gone. They're onto what's next, and that's some of the unfortunate things. So, like, I want to talk about contracts in track and field a little bit, and why you think it's been so secretive. It's a question I've asked almost every athlete. Why do you think contracts in track and field is so secretive?
It's the same thing with contracts in a job. It's the same way you'd walk through the door and Kareem and I will interview for the same job. And I'm going to negotiate a price and he's going to negotiate a price. And it could be as far apart as you could imagine. Because at the end of the day, the companies trying to save money. That's the reality of shoe companies. That's the reality of anything. The least people can pay, they will. So I think that level of secrecy keeps it private. You don't know. If you look at it like the American culture, it is to tell you what the figures are.
Yes.
So even in something like the US MLS, the salaries are public.
Public, yeah.
You can go online and see what a footballer is making. And I think that's helpful to an agent to be able to negotiate, or a player
Yeah.
to be able to negotiate and say, hey, but I realize that this player is making this is what's happening. And so I think I deserve to be at this level based on what I'm bringing to the team, etc. So that's really one of those, I think, very tricky ways
Yeah.
of ensuring that you're probably not getting as much as you should. Let me put it like that.
Yeah, I mean,
what do you think?
I think you made a great point just now, right? Answered the question perfectly in terms of they're trying to take away that negotiating point from you, right? If an athlete jumps 17 flat, you're making $100,000, and there's an athlete jumping 16.5, and they're making 150,000. If I knew that,
Yeah.
you can't pay that person more than me, right?
Yeah.
I'm bringing more value. You know, I probably have a bigger brand. I'm winning international medals. You can bring all those to the table now and negotiate against that. So shoe companies can end up paying you less than you're thinking you're getting. You might be thinking you're the highest paid person,
Yeah.
but without that pay transparency, then you know you're gonna be underpaid. And I think that's helped a lot of people in the NFL and the NBA be able to negotiate, because they can look and like, oh, that guy's averaging 20, he's getting 100 million. I'm averaging 30, so you have to give me 200 million, right? I'm contributing more to the team.
And I think that's why it's so important who is negotiating for you.
Yes.
So that's one of the considerations that I think that athletes need to make. Be very careful about who you have as your representatives, because you need people with experience in what they're doing and an understanding of how to negotiate. Because that shoe contract is so important in terms of everything in terms of what the terms are related to it. And I think times have changed a lot. So the ability to, I would say, step out of the box is a leverage that athletes have that I don't know if they know that they have. Because for a lot of them, they're sought after brands.
Yeah.
You know, so you want to be able to sit at that table with somebody who knows how to negotiate. And there are some top agents, we all know them. And there are some that are not that great. When you think about even a sport like football, the agent is so important because those negotiations with the top clubs in the world, the negotiations with the teams that you're playing at, it makes or breaks your career.
Yes.
And your earning potential has to be maximized because, as we said before, it's a short window. So you want to make the right decision.
Yeah.
AKA, don't be cheap with your agent.
No,
people.
please. And no offense, but it's not your auntie and your uncle.
Yeah.
No
It's
offense.
business.
It is a job, right? But this is another conversation also that we've seen, especially on Twitter, about our Jamaican athletes, and do we have any brands, right? For argument's sake,
Usain Bolt.
right? But like currently, so it's this discussion now, right, where the American athletes, have been getting these big contracts, and then I'm seeing this trend now of saying there's just a handful of marketable athletes. And I mean, I do understand their points because some of these athletes will eventually need help in that department. But I do feel like we do have marketable athletes. Jadon is very marketable. Yeah. I can think of 10 brands that I know that Jadon, could do well with. Shellen Fraser Price, Hans Parchment. There's so many, to me, but I just don't think athletes do understand the power of their branding outside of their respective sports.
I want to expand on that before you answer it, because
Okay.
I agree 100%. So I did a thread with an athlete, I won't say the name, and just listing out the brands partnership that they did this year. It was at least 10, and these are big brands that they did it with, right? I feel like our Jamaican athletes don't.
I know who that athlete
Yeah,
is. We all do.
Yeah, that Jamaican athletes who don't get those opportunities. A lot of people speculate is because of the location, proximity, and how us as Jamaican translate to bigger
nationality.
audience,
It's a part of
nationality, right? So like, you tell me, I'm learning to learn right now. How much does that actually play a part in the negotiation, and should it, in terms of those things?
This may not be an opinion that people want to hear, but I think
Unpopular opinion.
it's an unpopular opinion. But I think that a part of it also is a numbers game related to where they're from. It's the reality of the world. The US is a much bigger market than Jamaica. And unfortunately, you'll find that a lot of those US athletes will bank more because, by virtue of where they're from.
My only pushback on that is
Yes.
in the NBA, right, specifically, they have Giannis, who's being pushed by Nike. They have Yakov, who's from Slovenia. They have.
But they're part of an American sport.
They are
so
part-
yes.
Yes, so I feel like track and field is global, so it can be like put into these brackets of like, hey, no, we're gonna bring up Usain Bolt. Obviously, he was
Yes.
like big Gatorade, which is an American brand.
Absolutely. And I think brands are looking for numbers too. So you're saying his numbers are in the, where is it? Well, you're saying is obviously,
He has 12 million Instagram followers. So
how many does
12
he have
million.
now? It's 12 million.
Or
No,
upwards of that, yeah.
that's the strongest. Who is next? Maybe Shakiri.
Shakira has 3 million right now.
Shakiri would be next in track and field.
Yeah, no, actually next is actually a German girl named Alika. She has 5
Really?
million followers. You probably don't know. She's a model and she's signed with Boss.
There you go.
So
So those numbers are important. And I
Yes.
think that's also going to be
Yeah,
a
that's proving your
metric.
point, yes.
So the metric that marketers look for are things like your brand reach, your engagement, your following. And that's why I always say ensure that you're building your brand as you go along. It's an important part of what you do. And that's why it's only half of the job to compete. The other half is how am I building out my brand? How am I building my following? How do I engage with the public? How do I ensure that my name becomes a household name? All of those considerations are so important because you're going to bank off of that. That's how you're going to be able to pull in the sponsorship dollars. Because when somebody like me sits at a table, I'm talking numbers. I'm talking following online.
Yes.
I'm talking, how many media mentions you have. All of that is a part of the metrics that brands are looking for. And that's why it's important. That's why Usain Bolt to this day is going to be banking. And the single most important thing as well is this sounds terrible, I don't know. Winning is important.
it is important because it puts you in front of more people, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So Jamaicans love winners.
Yeah.
And I think globally people gravitate towards winners. And so that's an important consideration too. If you can get in front of the audience in your sport, the more you win is the further in front you get in front of them, the more headlines you're gonna gather, the more people are gonna talk about your brand. So looking at even Shakiri, it was so important for her to win. And with her being world champion last year, all those brand deals came as a result of that happening. I'm not sure that they were there before.
Yes.
Outside of Nike, I don't remember.
And
But almost every week now there's a new deal.
Listen.
Well, here's-
Yes.
It's on the back of the work that's done. So also that's an important part. How do you build out that legacy?
Yeah.
How well are you doing in the sport that's gonna continue to pay you? And again, you're saying it's just a perfect example. Yes.